Good afternoon and welcome. We will begin in 9 minutes. Good afternoon. We will begin in 8 minutes.
Hi, everyone.
Good afternoon, everyone. We will begin in 7 minutes. Welcome, everyone. We will begin in 6 minutes. Welcome, everyone. We will begin in 5 minutes. Good afternoon and welcome. We will begin in 4 minutes. Welcome, everyone. We will begin in 3 minutes. Good afternoon and welcome. We will begin in 2 minutes. Good afternoon. We will begin in 1 minute.
Hello and welcome to ATARC's webinar series. Today, topic experts will share strategies that agencies can implement to alleviate the concern of the unknown and make operations more efficient. My name is Kirsten Patton, and I'm a performance consultant at Dale Carnegie, Tampa Bay, and I have the pleasure of moderating today's panel. ATARC stands for the Advanced Technology Academic Research Center, and ATARC is a nonprofit that facilitates collaboration between government, industry, and academia in order to accelerate technology modernization initiatives. ATARC provides ongoing opportunities for cross-agency collaboration through on-site interaction, learning, and market research. I would like to welcome all of our attendees that are joining us today, and a special thanks to Jacob Scott, Kristen Cook, and the entire Pluralsight team. This afternoon, we are going to hear from our panelists, followed by a Q&A session where we will also answer a few polls and answer your questions as we go. Before we begin, I just want to encourage the audience to please submit those questions of your own in the Q&A section of this platform, and also respond to the poll questions in order to ensure that you receive your CPE credit. With that all said, I'd like to invite our panelists to please go ahead and come on camera and unmute yourself. We're just going to go around and have you each introduce yourself, your name, your agency, what role you play there, and anything else you'd like to share with our audience up top. So let's start off with Eric first, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Eric Popiel. I work for the Office of Personnel Management. I run the Strategic Workforce Foresight team, which is tasked with studying the future, looking out long-term and identifying the trends that are going to impact the federal workforce, and then taking those insights and passing them on to senior leaders. Been with OPM about 4 years, and prior to that, I was with the Coast Guard for 20. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Let's jump over to Jolyn next.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joellen Jarrett. I'm with the U.S. Small Business Administration. I am their current Chief Learning Officer and Chief of Organizational Effectiveness. So that covers many things, but primarily strategic talent and organizational development and performance management are probably the two areas most impacted by today's topic. I've been with SBA for 7 years and 27 years in lots of other agencies. So
Fantastic. All right, Christy, let's hear from you next.
Hi, my name is Christy Daphnis, and I'm the branch chief of the Federal Workforce Branch here at the Office of Management and Budget. I am also co-implementation lead for the President's Management Agenda Priority 1, which is the priority that focuses on the federal workforce. I co-lead that with my colleagues at OPM, and it's really great to see so many familiar faces on the panel, Michelle and Eric and Joellen, because we've worked together on a lot of these issues for many years. I've been here at OMB for nearly 20 years in a variety of different roles, and in this particular role for the last 6 or 7 years. Thank you.
Well, wonderful. All right, Michelle, let's hear from you next.
Hello, everybody. So again, my name is Michelle Early, and I am the USA Jobs Program Manager. I've been serving in this role for 10 years. Before that, many agencies, so I have almost 20 years in government. My main reason for being here is under the USA Jobs umbrella, we have 3 products. We have what most people are familiar with, usajobs.gov. That's really about helping talent explore and find job opportunities based on experience, skills, and interests. Our second product is our agency talent portal for our hiring managers, HR specialists, and recruiters to proactively recruit talent for opportunities. But most importantly, why I'm here today is our third product is our open opportunities platform that does foster reskilling and upskilling through experiential learning opportunities. That can be in the form of small projects, coaching, mentoring, job shadowing. And this is for the audience is the federal workforce. So it really is a pleasure to be here to talk about reskilling and upskilling strategies. It's something I'm very passionate about and really helping to generate the workforce of the future.
Great, thank you so much. And let's jump to Mike next.
There we go. Thank you, Kirsten. Hi, I'm Mike Sorrento. I'm the director of the Defense Manpower Data Center with an agency within the Department of Defense. My key role there is the oversight of enterprise HRIT programs and activities that help deliver not only the tools to the workforce to perform their management of people and exercising over government, military and contractor and civilian, but also as the acting as the CIO for that HRIT portfolio writ large across the department. I wear a couple other hats as well, which are relevant, which is the authorizing official for those 60 plus systems, which manages across the cybersecurity pieces of that framework, as well as the portfolio manager for the enterprise IT for HR. And lastly, as is acting as a chief data officer for a massive amount of data in the HR IT space. And so with all those responsibilities, I link across the entire Department of Defense with all the community that's managing HR functions to help work towards more efficient, and obviously working towards optimization of the portfolio. There's many systems that perform what could be considered redundant activities. They grow up over time, so we're working towards that. But the more important thing in the piece that I'd like to bring to this conversation is the role that data can use to support better decision making in terms of how we make the workforce more effective and useful for meeting current and future mission demands. I welcome the conversation as we go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. And over to you, Tony. Tony, we're having a little trouble hearing you. Not yet. It looks like you're not mute it. Well, now you're muted. Let's see. Might be the headset. We'll give Tony just a second here.
Sorry about that. I don't know what's happening, but hopefully that helped.
You're good.
Thank you. Sorry, I just had to turn it on, off and on again, so to speak. All right. So I'm Tony Holmes. I'm from Pluralsight. I lead the solution architects team in the public sector, and we work closely with DoD, the federal agencies, state and local, and academia as well. We help organizations and agencies with workforce development, workforce transformation, including specializing in helping them upskill and cross-skill people from different roles to help alleviate the skills crunch that we're facing specifically in technology. And like everybody else, I'm looking forward to this conversation today, and apologies for the technical glitch at the beginning.
Oh, that's okay. It happens. Well, thank you all so much for being here, and we are about to dive right into it. With that said, to kick things off, I am going to call on Michelle first, but we don't necessarily have to go in any particular order. So if you're ready to respond to something, or you want to play off of something that a prior panelist shared, just go ahead and unmute yourself, and then that'll signal to me that you're ready to jump in so that we're not talking over one another. So Michelle, I'm going to call on you first for the first question I have lined up. I want to ask, what is reskilling and upskilling, and why is it that having a strategy in place for this is so important in terms of how it impacts the workforce that we all know is so crucial to agencies?
Yes, that's a great question. And I'm going to kind of put on my manager hat along with the USA Jobs Program Manager hat, because I can kind of go back and forth. But, start with reskilling. It is preparing members of your workforce to take on a new role that requires new skills that complement existing applicable skill sets to perform the work. For USA Jobs, an example of this, we bring in new talent onto our team. In many cases, they start off as business analysts, and we've had several who are like, as they join the team, they're like, I'm really interested in user research and kind of the design space. So their curiosity, their analytical skills, they're very much transferable to make that shift to those new roles, but they still need more training in human-centered design, visual design, or data analytics to take on the new role. So, we're investing in reskilling as an example. In upskilling, it is about increasing your workforce's current skill set to prepare them for roles of greater responsibility, including leadership positions. So again, in USA Jobs, we continue to invest in our employees' technical training along with soft skill development, with great focus on building out learning curriculums that aid our entry-level employees to advance to mid-career positions, but also really leverage existing leadership development programs to invest in our future leaders of our organization. And really to kind of close out, why is this important to have a strategy? Every manager should conduct some kind of workforce and succession planning to make sure they understand the skills and experience and proficiency levels of their current workforce, and really be able to hone in and identify the skill gaps. And in turn, then you really can consider how best to close those gaps, either with reskilling or upskilling in your organization. Maybe you can bring in talent from other parts of the larger organization, or you do need to hire new talent. And just research shows that organizations with a growth mindset who invest in a learning and development approach will increase employee engagement, retention, along with improved performance to meet mission outcomes.
Well said, absolutely. Would any of our other panelists like to jump in and share some of the things that they're doing around reskilling or upskilling? Christy, go for it.
Yeah, I'm actually going to not talk specifically about what I'm doing here at OMB because that's not my responsibility, but I just want to take a step back from some of the specifics that I think Michelle and Eric and Joellen will be getting into, and Mike as they talk about their agencies and what they're doing, and talk a little bit about how this reskilling and upskilling sort of fits into the broader PMA, and those strategies fit into the PMA and why they're crucial. I mean, I think overall, the President's Management Agenda Priority 1, the federal workforce priority, includes strategies to match federal workers with their skill sets and opportunities in a very broad way. And Eric has been working on a lot of this actually in some of his work with our PMA implementation teams. But in particular, I think it's important to note that the priority 1 strategy 2 that's really focused around employee engagement is very relevant here. Because if we can be matching our workforce with the skills that they need and also with what our agencies need to achieve their mission, then we are in an ideal situation for everyone. And that's really what it boils down to when we're talking about strategic workforce management. I think it's important that we recognize employees' aptitude and interest and help provide strategies for them to learn, develop, and grow, but to help develop and grow them into new skill sets that do align with that agency mission delivery. So just wanted to kind of add that sort of broader view, at least the way that we're kind of looking at it at the PMA level.
Oh, absolutely. Joellen, go ahead.
Thank you. I was so encouraged to hear Michelle say communication skills because I think, or soft skills is what you said, Michelle, because as we are moving into a hybrid and greater use of remote environments, it is not enough for us to focus on making sure that our workforce has the new data skill sets that they need, the new technical skill sets that they need to efficiently and effectively operate in those new environments. They also need the soft skills to understand how to effectively integrate technology into the new normal, so to speak, or the new environment in which we find ourselves. So it really is a culmination of things. You asked what we're doing, and I would just say on a really high level, the last 2 years has taught us the importance of making sure our workforce understands how to really leverage the tools at hand, as simple as MS Teams and as complicated as Power BI dashboards to be able to tell the story. Data is how we really put forth our stories around the work being done. It is not that I saw my employees sitting in a seat, it's that I have the data from the employee's work. And so making sure that our workforce has the new skills needed. I wish they weren't new skills. I wish it was skills we always had, but making sure that they have the newer skills needed to effectively tell the story about all the good work that they've done is really where we are right now.
Absolutely. And I feel like that might be a good, oh, go ahead, Eric. What were you going to say?
So I was just going to piggyback off what Christy and Joellen said, is that I think reskilling and upskilling starts with the premise that people are the center of any organization. And without them, your organization is going to inherently fail, right? So we can't just bring in a bunch of robots and expect the government to work. It's just not going to. And so I really think that if we look at the initiatives that we're trying to do, it's all about looking at the employees that we have, understand that we do have to make some changes, but then focusing on them, figuring out what their skill set is, what their skill set could be, and then retraining, reskilling them so that they can continue on with the organization in a way that will provide value to it, provide value to them and the organization, so we don't lose a bunch of highly qualified people and we continue to move them up through the organization. We did this really successfully with the IRS when they were doing some consolidation out in Sacramento and Austin and Cincinnati. Really took a look at the employees, said, we just don't want to let these people go. We want them to continue in the organization. And so we were able to do some assessments. We were able to put them through a reskilling program. We were able to get them into jobs that were higher graded, that were focused on what the IRS needed in the future, which is customer service. And by doing so, we maintained that workforce. We upskilled them, and they're now working on kind of a new career path. And we're able to keep them in the organization. And I think everybody benefited from them and the organization included. So I think we got to start with that premise. If we're going to do this, people are at the center of the organization.
Yeah, and Eric, I was going to mention that pilot, and we're talking about reskilling and upskilling. I think more than saying re or like up, it's really about evolving a skill set for what we need, our needs for today and our needs for tomorrow, and making sure that our people are prepared to deliver on that in the direction that they want to take in terms of how they're contributing to the mission of the organization.
Yeah, it's a huge success story. Tony, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess what I want to do is just piggyback on the back of what Eric just said. I mean, that's something we see across high performance organizations and agencies that we work with, is that the ultimate performance and the ability to meet mission objectives are very much tied to the skills and abilities of those that are supporting that mission. So you can have all the latest technologies and all the latest process improvements in place, but ultimately, if you don't have the right talent in place, you can't make that happen. And that's why, and tip of my hat to Joellen, because I'm a huge fan of the chief learning officer, and I think we need more of those within our public sector overall. It's something that is really important because we've spent so many years focusing on the technology. We've got the CTO, we've got the CISO that worries about our compliance and our security, but nobody's there on the board to make sure that we are supporting those missions going forward. And I think that's really important. And I did want to again just underline what Eric said. Why would you look to implement any technology on your missions without having any understanding whether the skills for that tech already exist, whether you can procure them, whether you can develop them, whether you can actually have the headcount? We've spent so much time in reactivity mode, and obviously, you know, that's a part of what we do is when we work with these agencies, we try to help give them that data and that insight into their workforce so they're not flying blind and they know whether they've got that ability by benchmarking their entire technical workforce to understand if they can meet that mission objective.
Absolutely. Now, Mike, Joellen opened the door a little while back in the conversation around data. So is there anything there that you'd like to speak to?
Well, she absolutely did. And when I was listening, I was really perking up. And you know, this is the space that I live in, and we spend a lot of time admiring, you know, a lot of data that's available, but working towards this goal and objective of making data, you know, highly visible, transparent, and useful. We're kind of piggybacking here off of the Evidence Act, right? Because the Evidence Act says we should share information really across the federal space and where we can get commercially available information. So those things are actually really happening. And when we're talking about workforce, we have a tremendous amount of powerful insights into really, I would say, the highlight for me is good performers, right? People that are really excited about their job and want to make a difference. And how do we not just take, hey, because their supervisor recommended them, but there's other things that are available to us in terms of what they deliver on a day-to-day basis that we can highlight and can help bring about really significant change going forward. And I'm going down a little bit of a rabbit hole on purpose because, you know, when you can find information about a person that isn't readily available, but because you've done some, you know, hooking things together, wiring things together, like we have on what we call an advanced analytics platform. And we use this advanced analytics platform, particularly for the secretary and the deputy secretary, to get answers to questions that they have that in the past might take a year to answer. And we have it available within the time that the question is asked before someone can build a query and pop it out and get the answer to how many of this or how many of that or information that without the concatenation of information together takes a ton of time to bring together, but we've done it. Those insights become extremely meaningful for a conversation that says, really, that's how many of those specific things that we have with these skills, for example. So where I'm going with this is we're leaning into the machine learning aspect and the artificial intelligence pieces, where we've stood up in the department a chief data officer and an analytics focus that's bringing together data scientists, individuals who are really, really strong with the ability to build algorithms. And we're starting to see the benefits of things where we can match people with emerging requirements for jobs. And I'll just say, we're also doing matching, finding trends in the medical space, which is not the focus of this conference, but just to kind of look at, hey, how can we be more insightful to know where maybe some of our military members might have been exposed or affected by different deployments of certain harms that were out in the environment. So those are examples of some of the things we're doing in advance, where the answers are going to be proactive as opposed to reactive. And I believe very strongly, for the purposes of retooling and reshaping the workforce, we will be doing the same thing with the data that we have that we're bringing together to make a difference.
Thank you, Mike, for sharing that with us. So Joe Ellen, I want to call on you next for our second question we've got. Why might the people at an agency be just as important to digital transformation, if not more, and just as important to the innovation of technology within an agency? And I also kind of want to take it another step forward too, just around motivation and how to be a leader and how to inspire people to get on board with that effort. But please share with me your thoughts.
Well, the last part is the hardest part. So I think Eric and Mike have already kind of started to allude to the why. People run the organization. Machines and technology are enablers, but without people, we don't have organizations. That's just, if anyone knows of an organization that exists without a human being in it, let me know, because I haven't found one yet. And so really, technology transformation, the success of it really relies upon our workforce's ability and willingness to use the new tech and support the implementation and really effectively and efficiently integrate new tech with existing tech. And all of that is really contingent upon the skill sets of our workforce. And we don't have an army of data scientists. We have people doing lots of different jobs, and we're not going to create an army of data scientists, but we do have to make a path for all of our workforce to learn enough of the skill sets to function in one of those roles, either as an end user, a consumer of the technology, where they're effectively using it to meet the mission of the organization, increase service delivery, improve product development, what haven't you, or from the support side of things, our IT folks, making sure that they understand what is needed to structure an implementation, actually affect an implementation, and then support the implementation on the back end. I think where I saw this best over the last couple of years was really our rollout of MS Teams. And I have to give my CIO shop a little bit of props, because they did a great job. And then I'm not saying that just because I owe the CIO, I'm not. We were able to pretty quickly implement MS Teams and a lot of the functionality, so much so that we actually hosted a 6 or 8 month program of coaches getting trained and certified to be federal coaches in the federal spaces. I think we had over 100 folks coming together on a monthly basis in an MS Teams environment. Was it perfect? No, because we were leveraging MS Teams across multiple organizations, and all of us had different instances, but we did have very good technical support to help us kind of iron out the bumps as they occurred. And it was a very successful endeavor, which showed me that it could be done. But again, going way back to what Michelle said, it took a lot of the soft skills stuff. It took a lot of communication. It took a lot of understanding. It took a lot of back and forth and tenacity on the part of the end users to really make that a success. Had they not been willing to learn in that environment, the rest of it would have been a moot point. So that's kind of the long answer to that question. And then from a leader perspective, I would just say, it's the championship. It's continually asking, what's the barrier? What's stopping us? What can we do? How do we address what you need? Where is there a gap? It's waving the flag. It's patting folks on the back. It's trying to make sure that you're getting rid of anything that could be a barrier between the learning, the acceptance of the technology, and encouraging people to use it.
So Tony, I'm going to call on you in just a moment, but Joellen, since you just brought up barriers and Jory Heckman has a question around that, what were some of the common barriers that you guys did run into when it came to putting people into these new positions?
Well, the example that I just gave, I think the biggest barrier was uniformity of technology. And I think, that was because we were endeavoring to do a cross-agency learning in a virtual environment at a time when we'd never done something like that before. But from a smaller scale perspective, I do think that making sure that if we know that we've got folks that don't have the skill set, that we are giving them consumable chunks of learning, look, see, do's. One of my past agencies, we rolled out a new HR information system. And one of the best things I think we ever did was we created look, see, do little recordings that folks could use to figure out, how do I don't need to know the whole system, but right now, in this next 5 minutes, I need to execute this action. How do I do it? And so that's what these did. And I think that micro learning approach to trying to get technology buy-in on the end user side of the house is a great strategy to remove barriers.
Ooh, micro learning. I like that. Tony, go ahead.
Yeah, there was so much in Jo Ellen's response there. And there's a couple of areas that I wanted to touch on. One of the things that I think that was really important that she mentioned was, leading from the top. We realized early on working with agencies and organizations that if a learning culture can be encouraged from the executive suite, from the leadership, and then communicated and encouraged all the way down through the organization, then inevitably you're going to start to find that acceptance of learning and this much stronger comfort with learning. I mean, if all organizations are tech organizations, as everyone keeps telling us, then by definition, all organizations must be learning organizations, because you can't be a successful tech org without having learning as a part of your daily production life. So learning needs to be a tactical ability, just like having meetings or hiring people or any of the other things that you do to run your agency successfully. An organization that's built a culture of learning, you should have so much confidence in your ability to lead to learning that the idea of developing new skills into the org seems trivial. It doesn't seem like a barrier anymore. A culture of learning recognizes that learning happens all the time, not just when your LMS is tracking the time that someone's watching videos, but the time they're sitting in a classroom. It recognizes that all learning is valuable, even the small amounts of learning that we go through every day in our agencies, even learning that appears to not have a specific adjacency to the domain that's being pursued. So I just want to, again, applaud what Jo Ellen said, because there's a lot of agencies that we work with that don't understand that it needs to be encouraged from the top. And a lot of our agencies that we work with tend to pay lip service to that as well. You have people at the top saying, we must learn more, we must do more. And then as that message goes down through the ranks to the tip of the spear, it gets diluted. And we still end up with people that are trying to do a very difficult job every single day, where they're not given time to learn and they're not given time to assimilate that new information. We give our people hundreds of hours of information and maybe half an hour a week, if they're lucky, to be able to assimilate that information, or a couple of hours a week, maybe in some of the better circumstances. So I think it's definitely a cultural approach, and I wholeheartedly support what Jo Ellen just said around that.
Absolutely. All right, Eric, I want to start with you next, because I think you brought this up during your intro. How does the new normal of predominantly remote and hybrid work make upskilling and reskilling more challenging for agencies?
Yeah, so I think this is it's challenging because everybody's different and they all learn and do things differently, right? So some people are really good in an office environment. Some people are really good virtual. Some people work alone. Some people like teams. So I think you have a variety of different people. And in an organization as large as the federal government, you've got a bunch of different ways that people are going to learn. And I think the key is to really begin to understand your people. And so this is going to take some time on a manager or a leader's to get to know their people, right? So before, when we all went into the office, you saw someone sitting at the cube, they're doing their thing, and maybe you didn't have that desire to maybe to get to know them, just did their job, they did their job, they produced, everything was fine. Now I really think you need to get to know them and understand what makes them tick and understand how they learn best, and how you can train them and how they can be trained to really be a value add, a continual value add to the organization, right? I think that this is going to be harder as we continue in this hybrid mode or whatever we're in right now. I still think it's transitory to some extent. But I really think it's going to be, as Tony said, right? Leadership is going to have to really drive a lot of this and make sure that people are doing this. And I think it's also going to take some intentionality on people's part. It's not going to be as easy as it was back before COVID, right? We're in a different environment. And so we need to recognize that, and leadership needs to recognize that it's going to be harder. It may take some more time. People are going to learn differently at different levels, and we have to be accepting of people and ensure that people are available. The other thing too that I think is important is that we have to look at this through like a lens of equity. We take a lot of things for granted, and I know I do, right? So I sit at my home office and I've got 3-5 different screens up, all with different kinds of stuff. That's not everybody's home office. That's not everybody's home life. And so if we look at this, when we start reskilling and upskilling, and retraining the workforce and building those skills, we have to look at this from an equity standpoint to ensure that we're not just catering to the people that, oh, well, it's really easy. Eric does a really good job on his own and he can do virtual stuff. Let's just cater to people like him. You're going to leave a whole bunch of people out, and that's not what we want to do. So leadership has to be intentional and realize it's going to take time and it's a lot tougher, but I think it's righteous work and you have to take the effort to do this.
Such a good example. Absolutely. Christy, go ahead.
Yeah, notice I unmuted just right before Eric said transitory, because one thing I really wanted to point out here and amplify is that we are in a transition period. You know, we've had 2 years of a lot of transition from here to there and back. And, you know, it's been a long 2 years for everyone. Federal government employees, not federal government employees, you know, in every aspect of their lives. I think that, you know, at this point in time, from the federal government wide level, we are taking a very principles driven approach to the long-term vision for our federal workplace and the future of work, so to speak. And that also includes like building in flexibility so that leaders can do what Eric said. So they can take into account their workforce, the workforce's needs, the mission, which is so different from one agency to the next, from one office to the next. I think that as we think about these issues, we want to keep the needs of our workforce front and center. It's really about recognizing that and thinking carefully about change management and implementation, and included in all that is training, development, and these other aspects that we've been talking about for the last 30 minutes. I think the other thing, you know, that I would just note is that we always talk about the challenges associated with this new normal and, you know, the hybrid environment, but actually in a lot of places, we've seen so many benefits. When it comes to collaboration, just as an example, you know, even in my job, I'm sitting here in DC, you know, at the center of government. Prior to having Zoom, which only happened 2 years ago, I didn't really have a good way to connect in a meaningful manner to our federal employees across the country. You know, now we regularly meet with federal executive board leaders and you know, small agency leaders that are out in other parts of the country. We can quickly call together a meeting or a gathering of 200 plus people. That's something we didn't have access to before. So it's integrating some of those beneficial aspects of this hybrid environment while recognizing, you know, that there are the people and community driven needs that exist when we're thinking about our workforce more broadly.
Oh, I love that you said that, Christy. That's so true. Joellen?
Christy made me so excited. Thank you, Christy. So she's absolutely right. She's absolutely right. In terms of the benefits, we we focus so much on the other stuff. Prior to COVID, one of my biggest struggles as a chief learning officer was making sure that I was efficiently and effectively executing my budget and still enabling my field folks fair and equitable training opportunities. And travel dollars were crazy, right? Now, we are pretty much 100% virtual delivery, understanding that there are challenges to be mitigated in doing that, which we are doing. We are mitigating those challenges, but we have been able to bring people together in a way that we never could before in learning environments where, now we have field and headquarters people in the same class with a lot of knowledge transfer happening that wasn't happening before. And that has absolutely been a positive outcome of a not so positive last couple of years.
All right, well, I got so carried away in the conversation, I forgot about our polls. So let's go ahead and pop up our first poll question. We might have to do them a little rapid fire. Do you feel that your organization provides enough time to train and upskill for your role? So audience, go ahead and respond to that. Any other comments here from our panelists before we move on, or do we feel like we've covered that topic enough now? All right, great. Let's go ahead and pop up poll question number 2 then. We'll just do them back to back, and then I'll post our next question that we'll respond to. Okay, do you feel that your organization provides enough resources to train and upskill for your role? So please go ahead and respond to those. For the folks at home, again, just another reminder that you will need to answer these poll questions in order to receive your CPE credits. And I'm also going to do a last call for audience questions. So if you have them, please go ahead and send them in. I see some folks have been responding via the chat, which is great. All righty. So Mike, I want to ask you to respond to this next question first, please. What are some best practices that you'd recommend for upskilling and reskilling that really help agencies assess their skill sets, improve them internally, acquire skills externally, and just measure success overall? So anything you can share with us around that topic?
Absolutely. I'll share a specific example of what my organization is doing to lead as a pilot, which we intend to roll out across the entire department, and that is to develop career path guides. So we call it the career path guide, which identifies the current as-is environment. So we know we have a lot of programs and we manage things sort of in silos, right? And where we're headed in the future with leveraging cloud technologies and DevSecOps pipelines to have more agile processes and techniques. And there's a big gap. There's a long journey between the current as is and the future to be. New technologies, the way in which we deliver services, and the way in which our employees have to operate to support those services. And the mapping of the work and that's being done that identifies future roles, right? Things that are like product owners and program managers that have a little bit different way in which they manage services as opposed to manage labor, right? That we're managing a service that's being provided is a different way. And those are 2 examples of many of that we're looking at. And as we look at the skills needed to perform the work of the future, we look at how do you develop the programs associated with training, education, this kind of skills that you're looking for, whether it's experience that individuals have or need to get in order to become more proficient in the future, needs that we assess today. And then mapping across the board, the Army is actually doing a fantastic program that's helping to develop how they look at their future leaders, right? The key linchpin for the Army has always been the colonel, the 06. And how do they develop that 06 to be possess those kinds of skills that are at the command level? It's a very similar thing that we're trying to do in the civilian space as well, to map out that journey. We call it the journey of an individual's career. And while you can look at one specific job, when you start to look at all of those jobs, or skills that you need for the future, you can start to boil it down to a series of really effective programs. And we're actually starting to develop those now, because the world is changing in front of us, as we've all heard about on this particular session. But we're not going to wait until it happens, right? We've got to get ahead of it before we're there, so that the timing is just right to support the work of the future.
Thank you, Mike. Michelle, go ahead.
I'd love to just sort of commend Mike on what they're doing, and that I think we've taken a very similar approach in our organization and USA Jobs, as sort of that mapping that journey. And it is really important, I like to think of it in terms of crowdsourcing, that, really decentralizing that as much as possible down to the lowest levels that they're thinking about the career mapping. And what I say is like the frontline supervisor leaders, and that they look at their area of responsibility and what are the skills, the proficiency levels. And as they identify that, then what are the types of learning and development activities, really creating that curriculum that could be classroom or virtual training, which should always be followed up by experiential learning, putting that knowledge into practice, and then thinking about, those who want to get more involved into that learning and development, doing details or rotations, and ultimately they get that career conversion, whether maybe they're taking a lateral move somewhere or being promoted. And so for USA Jobs, as we build this out for ourselves, we look at how can we incorporate this into our capabilities for agencies. Like I said, if you're doing it in smaller and smaller parts of the organization, how could that all aggregate and roll up and be used across the federal government, really taking advantage of the deep data analysis and data science and AI and all those kinds of things. So we're in the early stages, just really thinking through that, but it's really exciting. And, I love hearing what's going on at DoD. And, just in it, I'll kind of close out here that besides, investing in that learning and development, also taking the time to look at and measure results of that investment you're making. Again, in your organization, if you're the lead, having access to the federal employee viewpoint survey, to what's that feedback you're getting from your organization, or looking at retention rates or the annual performance results, and other quick wins and things you could do to sort of gauge where you are is conducting state interviews with your staff or pulse surveys, because as the running theme here is our workforce, they're central to delivering the mission. And so that engagement is so critical.
Absolutely. Tony, go ahead.
Yeah, I just unmuted because Michelle said something that was really interesting to me. We talk about taking some concepts and ideas and taking them out across the federal government. And one of the things that really helps with that we haven't mentioned yet is career mobility. And I think that's absolutely critical. We need to focus on if we can make learning easily accessible to everybody, and then make a shift from change training from being a push endeavor to a pull endeavor, then we can actually help learning emerge as a cornerstone of the culture. And I keep talking about a culture of learning, but it really is vital. Imagine a federal government, if you will, where every role within that government has a clear path and a set of learning capabilities, a set of learning associated with that, instead of the traditional methods now where I try to show interest and I try to become a best match for the job that I can. Imagine as someone that wants career mobility within the government, if I can actually study for that path in my spare time because it has a clear path dictated, and I can go to that new job with, or the department with a set of data supporting what I know, supporting the work that I've done. People no longer have to take a chance on me and assess my applicability because they're trying to understand if I can learn it or not, because I've already done a portion of that learning. I've already shown it. And I can't help but think that the amount of people that wouldn't look for careers in the private sector, that wouldn't necessarily be lost from our organizations because they have a clear path to take their learning and their career in the direction that they want to, instead of feeling like they've been siloed.
Absolutely. Joellen.
So many good things. I just have to tell Tony that I absolutely love what he said when he said learning has to be a tactical ability. It's like guerrilla learning. So with the career paths, and that is absolutely, I think, the way we all need to go or grow, as the word would be. OPM, I think, started us out the gate years ago with a wonderful competency model and career path set for the HR series. And we've kind of all taken that and done different things with it. And SBA is no different. We're working on career paths, but we began way back several years ago with the competency modeling piece. And that's where understanding what learning has to occur. The difference is now our competency models need to be not based on what is, but based on what is to be. And so I think having the foresight to build into those competency models the skill sets that we need the workforce to be developing to, versus just, what is tried and true, what is in the position description right now, is going to be key. And then making sure that we have multiple paths to learning, because we've said it in many, many different ways. We are an adult learning group of folks. And so we can't just rely on, consumable traditional learning. We need to be using mentors and coaches and peer coaching skills. We need to do leadership learning journeys that are multi-pronged, where folks are having the opportunity to not just consume learning, but then kind of synthesize it in maybe group cohort discussions and things like that. And we need to make full use of those opportunities that Michelle started us out with through openopportunities.gov or through the President's Management Council Rotation Program. Because Tony, to your point, yes, we do want folks to be tactical learners and go out and pursue the learning for their next, but then we also have a responsibility as leaders in the federal government to make paths available for them to demonstrate that knowledge. Because I'm much more interested in someone who has demonstrated to me, even if via a rotational assignment, the knowledge that they have, versus somebody who just has the certificate that they went to the class.
Absolutely. Eric, go ahead.
Yeah, so thanks, Joellen, for using the word foresight, because that's my job at OPM. So I love that. And Mike, I assume a lot of the work that they're doing is at Army Futures Command, which is a pretty awesome organization. So I think Joellen is 100% correct, right? We have to start training and developing for future skills. What I'm super excited about is that as I've done some of this work with some of these organizations around government, we are beginning to do that and tackle that. The CFO Council started doing this and identifying future skills for the financial management workforce. They actually took that data and are beginning to look at new and innovative ways to train the financial management workforce. So what's interesting is I think that a lot of this that Joellen is talking about is on the ground level. The one thing that really gets me going is that I really think that if there was a silver lining on the pandemic, is that it really got senior leaders to realize this, that you just can't plan for the here and now. You have to look to the future, and that people are doing this. And what makes me really proud of the senior leadership in government is that they've realized this, they've taken it upon themselves and said, you know what, this is how we're going to do it. Whether it's a CFO council or the federal executive boards or some of the other organizations that I've worked with, I really think that culture of foresight, that culture of thinking about the future is starting to ingrain itself from the top down. And I think it's going to filter down. And in addition, it's also at the grassroots level too. I can't tell you how many people I've talked with at the sort of the staff level that are doing this in their offices as well too. So I think, yeah, it's a lot of green shoots, but if we look back 5-10 years from now, we're really going to see the benefits of doing this and thinking about the future more, and then integrating that into our plans and how we train and develop our people.
Well said, Eric. All right, we're going to pop up our last poll question. It'll be up on the screen here momentarily. Do you feel that your organization evangelizes learning? All right, wonderful. So we only have less than 10 minutes left of this discussion. So what I want to do is I want to give you each the opportunity to share with our audience what you think the biggest, most important key takeaway from this whole discussion is. And I always, being the Dale Carnegie nerd that I am, I have my golden book here. I always like to relate it back to leadership because I feel like that is just so important. No matter where you are in your organization, you can always be a leader in your own right. So with that, let's just hear from each of you on what it is that you want our audience to really walk away with a better understanding of. Mike, can we start with you, please?
Sure, happy to. I look at this challenge, it's an everyday challenge, whether it's a business or your personal life, to always want to be better, right? This is one of the things that if you're a doctor for life, and you have to learn every day, and you have to continue to adapt. We as professionals, we have to do the same, regardless of what business line you're in, whether it's the management, and everybody here mostly is in the management and support of people, but there's a lot more involved in that. My key takeaway that I'd like to kind of put on the table is we've had some great leadership in through the last couple of years, and we've got great leadership. So the leadership is there. The need for communication throughout your entire organization or across the entire space that we're talking about, I believe, is the linchpin in connecting the dots. So things like fireside chats, which is just a forum for bringing people together at every level of the organization, right? And so whether it's all of OPM, all of DoD, or simply all of DMDC, to get ideas from everyone and bring those things together. And I like what I think it was Jolene said, perhaps, but it's using the FEV survey, right? That's this climate surveys that we get, and looking across all of that data and finding the common themes are what are the employees asking for, right? It's almost like following an agile development methodology. You build what the customer wants, you make the customer happy, but you also have to still stay within some constraints. And I believe that is the key for our future workforce being able to effectively adapt. If they're saying, hey, I'm not getting something, what about this? There needs to be a competent review and response to, hey, sorry, we're going in this direction, or you know what, we've got to start an initiative that focuses on mentoring, or focuses on incentive programs, or focuses on some aspect of shaping the workforce to meet the current and future demands. And to me, that's the takeaway that I would like to leave on the table is it takes an entire village to turn the ship, tweak it a little bit, right? If you got to turn 180, it's a bigger turn. But if hopefully you've already made those adjustments on an ongoing basis, the change that might look very large today won't be as large in the future.
Thank you, Mike. That was great. Let's move over to Christy next.
Yeah, just building on what Mike said, it's about that evolution, the change and the change management, and connecting your people with your mission and figuring out how to get the best from your people to achieve your mission. And that's really what it boils down to. It's the reason we have training and development. It's very big picture, but it happens at the manager to employee level. So we have to look at both sides of that and put the tools in place so that managers have what they need, employees have what they need, and everyone is sort of swimming in the same direction to achieve that mission, because that's what it comes down to.
Thank you, Christy. Let's hear from Joellen next.
I had to get myself unmuted. So my key takeaway would be the idea of continuation. I think it's George Bernard Shaw says, we don't grow old. We don't stop playing because we grow old. We grow old because we stop playing. From a learning context, organizations that stop learning are organizations on the decline. And when we as humans stop learning, that's when we begin to decline. So from an individual perspective, my encouragement would be, there is always something new to learn. We need to be strategic point in time about where do we want to put our learning energies, and where do we want to focus our people's learning energies from an organizational perspective. But learning is key. Having a learning culture, promoting a learning culture from a leadership perspective is critical for us to continue to be successful, to be the innovative government that we're being called to be from the president's management agenda perspective, and really from our customers' perspectives. So that would be it.
Thank you, Joellen. See, Michelle, let's go to you next.
So I just really am amazed at everything that everyone has already covered and summarized. But I guess I also look at it as we've talked to about, being a learning organization and delivering on that mission, delivering for our customers, the general public. For us to be successful in generating that positive customer experience, you have to start with the employee experience first and foremost. So being intentional, looking at that employee experience, having that foresight, plug to you, Eric, and really fostering that growth mindset. Those are my key takeaways.
Thank you, Michelle. And Eric?
Yeah, so my key takeaway is just the future isn't written, right? A future isn't there. We all have the ability to make choices in our sphere of influence to impact that future for your organization. So I would just challenge everybody to think about where do you want you to be, where do you want your organization to be, and start making those proactive choices to get you there so that your organization and you don't survive in the future, but thrive. I always say that my goal as I'm going through this journey of life is not to pad my resume, but it's to leave a legacy. And I think if everybody took that attitude towards their organization themselves, we'd all be in a much better place. So you can impact the future. You can make choices that will make the future the way you want it to be. And that's what I would leave with everyone.
I love that. Thank you. And Tony?
Yeah, so I think the thing that there's a couple of things. Everyone has a personal responsibility for their own learning and development. It's not just the job of the agency and the organization. I think one of the problems is we've created a culture where it's encouraged and rewarded to be right all the time. But what I would say is don't be afraid to highlight what you don't know. One of the hardest jobs of any learner is uncovering skill gaps. And we need to make sure that people aren't afraid of those gaps, that they use them to become stronger, that they see them as a golden opportunity, no matter what your level is within the organization. And I think adding to Mike's point, we need to have the motivation for learning about sharing knowledge, so people can assist each other in their development. To Mike's point about driving a culture of learning, if they work towards knowledge sharing, understand that sharing failures is as important as sharing successes, so we can all learn from them. Sharing what you know with team members will not only reinforce their own team's knowledge, but potentially help to reframe the difficult concepts that we face and help others grasp those concepts. I think one of the coolest things in the world that we have right now is curiosity. I heard an interview briefly with someone the other day, and they said, if you could have anything in the world, what would it be? And one of the panelists said something along the lines of, I'd like the curiosity of a 6-year-old child, please, because I'd do anything to get that back. Often it's schooled out of us at a very early age, but if we're really lucky, sometimes as adults, we can work to regain that sense of wonderment and excitement at learning something new and cool. And I think that's something we need to promote within all our agencies.
Very well said, Tony. Thank you so much. And thank you to all of our panelists. This was such a great discussion. My notebook is filled now with all of these wonderful insights from you all. So thank you for that. I also want to thank our partners over at Pluralsight for making this panel discussion possible, and for you all at home for tuning in and sending in such great questions for the conversation. So with that, I just want to let everyone know that our next event will be up on the screen here shortly. It is When All Fails, How to Be Cyber Resilient. That will be on September 8th at the same time for our Thursday webinar series. All right, everyone, thanks again. I hope to stay in touch with you all to continue these conversations where we all learn so much from one another. And last but not least, respond to the poll if you'd like your CPE credit mailed to you. Otherwise, everyone have a great rest of your week. Bye.